Here we go. Here we go. Good
Right,
to see you guys.
Hey guys,
How
nice.
we doing? How we doing?
Good,
We
good,
have
good.
who do we have on the podcast today? G.
G, Umar, we have Jake on the podcast today. Jake is a chiropractor friend of mine. We met at a networking event. This is a funny story as well. And when we met, I remember we finished the networking event and you were leaving. You were literally going up the stairs from this basement venue. And I was like, no, I need to catch this guy. This is, I think, 2015. I was like, no, I need to catch this guy. I need to speak to him quickly. And you were literally about to bolt out. And we just managed to exchange details at the time. And then we met up and then, we hit it off. It was great. Really pleased that we got to do that because really great to know you. And
I'm so glad you remember that. I was rattling my head before this. And it's like, all I remember is I would come to see you in the clinic. You were helping out with my shoulders and stuff like that. I was like, but how on earth did we meet? I could not remember it at all. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I racked my brains about it a little bit as well, and it was great. It's just it's one of those moments where you just like 6 years down the line, I'm so glad this happened, and I'm so glad I chased you down because you've got a lot of interesting things to say. So just introduce yourself to us. Who are you? What do you do? And how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I'm a chiropractor. So I'm a chiropractor with a special interest in neurology. So I spend most of my time working with people with chronic pain, chronic dizziness. So I don't really want to see you if you hurt your back yesterday or you twinged your neck yesterday. I want to see you probably 6 months down the line when you've already been through the normal routine. So you've probably seen your GP, seen your physio, maybe seen a chiropractor, maybe seen some guys like yourselves, and you've done all the kind of the first step stuff. And if it hasn't got better, then I'm the hopefully the person you call next. So I graduated as a chiropractor back in 2009. Started studying neurology pretty intensely and passed the American Chiropractic Neurology Board exams, I think 2012. And I'm currently in my final year of a master's in neuroscience, in musculoskeletal neuroscience. So trying to again understand how does the nervous system control movement, balance, posture, and pain. So I'm a little bit geeky, but hopefully
we love geeks on here, man.
Right crowd. That's so impressive, man. That's really, really cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long journey so far, but there's more to go. There's we've all got our own heroes and goals. So I'm kind of on the path, and there's still higher heights to get to, I think.
Always, man.
Yeah, always right.
For sure. That's really interesting. I mean, one thing we talked about before the podcast started was we're always interested in why. So tell us, is there a clear path, a clear inspiration to your story?
Yeah. So if you want the fully honest version,
everything. Let's
go.
So
the full honest one actually comes from a place of insecurity, I think. So when I was growing up, my three best friends were all exceptional. So one was just this unbelievably talented, effortless artist. So at age 10 or 12, he's getting paid like £500 a portrait from friends and stuff like that to do portraits of his kids. And he hated it. So he found it so boring, but he was just this like Van Gogh. She could just paint, but would hate it. Another friend was the effortless sportsman. So basically put any racket in his hand and he would put a golf club in his hand. Before you know it, he's competitive. Tennis racket, squash racket, doesn't matter what, you just give him a ball of some kind and he would be easily county level. If he dedicated to any one of them, he would have, I'm sure he would have gone further. Unfortunately, some injuries prevented that. And he, again, didn't have maybe the commitment to take it as far as he wanted to, but he could have. And then the other guy was complete, no swear words, but he was annoying.
Say what you want.
Because he did both. He was this great artist, he was a musician, he was a great sportsman, and I was Joe Average. I was like in our group, had like the artistic one, the sporty one, the guy could do all of it, and I was the tall, lanky one, and that was literally that was how I remember being. So growing up, I just had these guys who were best friends, but also this massive pain in my ass. And so when I went to university, I don't think my brain really kicked in until I went to university. Suddenly I found out actually I did have some talent for academics. and neurology was the one I found most interesting. So I liked learning a lot at university. I found out how you should study. When I look back at how I studied it during GCSEs, I realized it was just awful technique. But at university, suddenly I found, hey, I've actually got some skill here, and there's something I could do with it. When I went into practice, the first 2 years of clinical practice are just brutal, because you come out thinking you're very book smart, and then you realize that really you have no practical skills at all. So all that book smart stuff doesn't really work. It doesn't really fix your patients. They need more than that.
Sure.
So again, you start getting that kind of like insecurity of, oh my God, I'm crap. What the hell's going on? Started seeing more and more complex patients that I just did not understand, that I had very little to offer to. And then one day I was living in the Netherlands at this time because I wanted to learn a language. So I was living abroad, and a colleague knocked on my door and said, hey, there's this guy called Professor Carrick, who's kind of like the neurology guy in the chiropractic world. He hasn't taught for ages, and he's coming back to Amsterdam next month. Maybe you want to go and do that? And I was like, yeah, cool, I'll go. So me and a good friend went almost just to get our CPD points. And it was just the most amazing weekend. It was a 3-day seminar. Chiropractors would bring their impossible cases. And these weren't just cases that the chiropractor hadn't been able to fix. They were cases that had been through 2 or 3 neurologists, seen multiple GPs, had seen everybody. And Professor Carrick and Professor Bock, between the two of them, would just do the examination, explain what was going on, and then literally within minutes you'd see meaningful changes in these impossible cases. And me and my friend just sat at the back of the seminar. It was almost like some wacko religious. We sat at the back, literally going, "What the hell?" And we're both pretty skeptical people by nature. And my friend was like, "What? Can you explain that to me?" I was like, "No, I haven't got the foggiest, but you're seeing what I'm seeing, right?" I remember just having this hallelujah moment. So I sat on the train on the way home, and sun was shining, and I just remember feeling like emotionally happy that this clear path had been set before me, that I had this path to mastery, that had these amazing role models who were just so good. I remember I probably retained less than 5% of that seminar. Far too much went over my head. But that didn't matter. The inspiration was there. And then from there, I went to a 3-day seminar every weekend, every month for 2 years. Spent every evening studying. I had the time then, single, no kids. So I just thought, right, now's the time to go for it. Invest all the time and money you can. So I did. Passed the board exams a couple of years later. And then from then, it's been a kind of steady path, luckily.
That's amazing, man. That's such a cool
started from
story.
a place of insecurity, but these days a little bit better, and feeling much more. Now it's all about the patient. So these days I don't really care about my own. There's other people better than me. There's other people worse than me. I don't really care about where I am on the scale. These days it's much more about the patient in front of me. What can I do? And if I can work really hard and give a little bit of benefit where they've had none somewhere else, then that's great. That's what I want to be.
I love that. That sounds like it's come full circle for you to have your own ownership of your own craft.
Yeah, I think so. It's a much more stable place to be coming from, and to learn for the sake of learning and out of curiosity rather than trying to make yourself somebody. I think a lot of people get hung up on that idea of being the best and being competitive. Like you guys. So it'd be easy to look at what you guys are doing, but like, oh man, they're getting more followers than me. I want to be better than them. They know more than me. Like you're in there. You and me probably only get to meet up once a year or so. And the last time we met up, I think I made a bit of a fuss about you because I was like, Jesus Christ, your skill level has jumped up so much in that last year.
Appreciate it.
I was teaching a seminar and you were there just asking so many good questions. Every single time you were the one making great observations, asking great questions. So it'd be really easy to look at how much you progressed in 1 year and be like, bloody hell, that's challenging to me. But that's not how it should be, right? You should be looking at you going, wow, God, what a fantastic progression, and use that as competition in the purest sense, to raise each other up. So if you get better, that's fantastic. I want to be competitive with you and try and raise my game as well.
Yeah. I really appreciate it, man. I mean, like a big reason for it is, that's why I said it, like I'm just super happy to have met you because you opened up my world to movement in a way which I needed it. I really wanted it. That was what I was really gunning for. I didn't, in a way, it's also like you don't know what you want, and when you opened that door for me, I was like, I'm walking through, I'm running through, I'm going. And so it was, yeah, it's been super curious, is that the curiosity. And also part of it was just showing up and like I know there were other chiropractors there, physiotherapists in that seminar as well. But so in the past, I may have been somebody who was just a little bit, I'm just going to know my place a little bit. I'm just going to let the other people do their thing. But I was like, no, I made a conscious effort to just ask all the questions, even if I did sound stupid. And so, yeah, so that's why it was just such a fruitful weekend. But it was also, just really driven by the curiosity and if you're saying the amount that I've improved in that year is you're a part of that as well, whether you knew that or not. So yeah, no, 100% is I learned when I start watching people and it's a few people I'm like, okay, they've got something useful to say, I definitely want to pay attention. I just take it away, I just think about it, and yeah, you're definitely one of those characters, man.
Yeah, thank you. And that's the key to it. I think a lot of people who attend seminars, whether it's with myself or others, the place they fall down is they listen in a seminar. They don't really engage. So I remember talking to a guy who was kind of bragging at how many hours of neurology seminars he'd done. And then we went to a seminar together and he was asleep at the back of the room. It's like, what?
Oh, man.
1,000 hours of neurology seminars and you were asleep for 3 days? That doesn't count. And there's no way when you go back to normal work life, you're then going through all the notes and understanding the way it was communicated. There's no way. Yeah. So what you need to be doing is when you're there is actively learning, actively listening, engaging, asking questions. The best thing is actually the ones you get wrong is the ones the one where there's almost a bit of an embarrassment factor. That's the ones you remember. You put your hands up in front of 300 people, get the answer wrong. You remember what the answer was.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's so much easier to get the answer wrong in your head, hear the right answer and go, oh yeah, well, that's what I meant.
Yeah,
no,
exactly. It's too easy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because when you do it, what's that line? Is be a fool. I can't remember. I'm gonna mash it up. But it's just basically be a fool once, but then be a master for the rest of your life, or something like that. It's
So on your WhatsApp on your WhatsApp profile.
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, it's there's a quote.
I'm gonna try and paraphrase it now. So to be the master, you have to first be the fool, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Being the fool is a precursor to being the master. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. There's another one I love about that, which is what the master does in the beginning, the fool does in the end.
Yeah.
And that one's a cool one because it applies to so many different levels, like exercise, diet, finances, whatever it is, whatever the wise man does in the beginning, the fool does in the end. I think that's a good one too. People who think about things make a change early on, and it's only when everyone else has done it that the fool thinks, "Oh, I should do that too." By which point you're probably too late and you've missed the whole point.
Yeah, exactly. You've just got to, just don't be afraid to ask the stupid questions because you're not going to be stupid after that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and I think that whole thing about knowing your place. Titles are nonsense. They're just I know guys who have got the same qualifications as myself and are vastly better. And yet, if you would see our names and titles on a piece of paper, you would say we're the same level. And they're massively better than me. And I know other guys who got their qualifications 30 years ago and haven't done anything different since.
Sure.
And I wouldn't refer friends or family to go and see them. So titles, I remember for us, as chiropractors, the one we're always intimidated by is any doctor, so particularly a GP or something like that. We always tend to bow our head and not make eye contact and say yes, sir, whatever you say. And I remember a GP coming to train us at university, and he said, "Hey, you need to hold your heads up higher because there's some areas where your training excels." So one of them was he was talking about looking in the back of someone's eye, because the eyes are the window to the brain, so you can see a huge amount of information about someone's health by looking in their eye. And he was saying that he does assessments for GPs, and one day they go in, he asks the guy, it's called fundoscopy, so he says to the guy, "Hey, can you do fundoscopy?" The guy doesn't know how to turn on the machine, he bursts into tears, and he says, "What's wrong?" He said, "I'm so sorry, I missed the day we were taught that." And his whole point was you don't know what someone else's skill is. Just because they got a title, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean they're better than you. So if you're working your ass off, it doesn't matter what you want to call yourself. Take yourself out of your box of I have to be this, and just be the best you can be. So, And that really helped me. I thought, from then I kind of stood a little taller when you're in other company.
Yeah, for sure. I think, that's an important lesson.
I think the advantage you guys have is that, like, you can be anything. As a chiropractor, I have a definite treatment remit. I have certain things I can do, I have certain things I can't do. And if I was to try and do those, it would be inappropriate, and I'd land up in trouble. I think the advantage you guys have is you can, like, the world's your oyster, really, isn't it? You can learn anything you want to do. You can be, you can brand yourself as anything you want to be, which is amazing.
Yeah,
it's really interesting. That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
We always talk to you about, like, Jordan Peterson's line about, like, pluripotentiality of youth, right? And I always find that PTs exist in that space, right? We can be everything, but sometimes in line with what you're talking about here, with holding your head high, sometimes you end up being a lot of nothing, just kind of a few kind of things spread all over. It's interesting that you, from your perspective, you're very focused, and that, do you see that as a limiting thing, or do you see that as a focusing thing that helps you move forward in a particular direction?
Yeah, I have. I think I have a few areas of interest that I tend to fluctuate around. So hopefully I'm always going the same direction, but sometimes I go probably too far in the neurology direction, and I go down that road for quite a long time, to the point where it's perhaps no longer that clinically relevant. And that's my whole point, is it needs to be applicable to the patients I'm in. There's no point for me learning a lot about, let's say, the Parkinson's disease on a cellular level. Interesting to know, but I'm not really using that in my daily clinical life. So fortunately, by the time I get to that point, I tend to lose interest. I get a bit bored, and then I might talk to guys like yourselves, and suddenly I think, actually, I want to learn more about mobility. And then I'll go off, away from neurology for a while, and I'll look really into mobility for a long time, and then get again to the point where I'm like, well, I'm not a PT. I'm not, like, why am I spending so much time? And then I lose interest, and then I'll go, oh, I just saw an interesting case of headaches. I haven't looked at headaches in a while. So I tend to kind of zigzag between different things. I've always been that way. I'm the same with exercise. Like, I often will get really inspired. Rock climbing is my one. Well, until lockdown, rock climbing was the one I was really inspired by. And you watch these guys who are just, guys and girls who are just like spiders. And I'll get really into it for about 3-4 months. And then I just start to lose interest. And then I want to do mountain biking. And so it's a bit of a shame sometimes, because it means I don't always hit PB, or I don't really excel to the point where I'd love to run a 5K in under 20 minutes. That's been like a goal for ages. But when you start to get to the stage where you're running 5K 2-3 times a week, and it's starting to get a bit boring, I'm like, I'm just bored now. I want to exercise for fun. And then so exercise-wise, I've always been that way. And I think in terms of my learning, I'll often do the same thing: is go down one path for a long time, get a bit bored, and then think, well. But I think curiosity is my main strength. I'm passionately curious, to a point where my poor wife is just bored senseless, because every evening I'll be like, oh, today I read this thing. Yesterday I was like, did you know there's 20,000 different types of moss? She was like, what? How do you think that's interesting? I was like, oh, I think it's interesting. Did you know moss is one of the most basic plants on the entire earth, and it's found everywhere apart from deserts? It's like, gee, we have our quote for this week, brother. We have our quote. See you there. Just did you know? You ain't heard that twice. You heard that like ever again on our podcast, man. Forget the exactly. Moss is where it's at. We've been missing the trick, my man.
I know. I thought we were going to be talking about the nervous system, and we're going to go off on a tangent about moss. This is going to be epic.
Hey, I've got like 20 minutes about moss, I can tell you. Don't worry.
Yeah,
that's amazing. That's how my brain works. Is I like, oh, that's really interesting.
I guess that's your own little superpower. You talked about your friends in their own context when they were younger, but the fact that you have this curious, various mind, that's just as valuable, man.
I think so, and it's something I've really trying to cultivate as well. So it's something I've got a 2-year-old son, and it's something I really try to encourage with him. It's really easy with kids when they're breaking stuff and doing stuff to be like, no, don't do that. Whereas with him, I try to explain to him why that wasn't so helpful. So the fact that our wall has pen marks all over the doors, that's just him seeing there's pen work on walls. It's like, yes, it does. It works great.
Yeah. Oh, I thought he was your decorator for your clinic.
I wish. So I think if that's one skill I think I want to cultivate myself, is that lifelong learning, curiosity, even if it doesn't seem. The other thing I think also is I became convinced probably when you and me met, Gurinder, about 4 or 5 years ago, that there must be a better way to operate my business, or there must be a business out there that isn't around, that is genuinely unique, is a new thing. But there's no new ideas. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants. So, or on the heads of giants, or whatever that quote is meant to be.
Yeah, shoulders, yeah.
So there's no new ideas. So all it is current knowledge or ideas, and then you just twist it a little bit, and then, lo and behold, you've got a new idea. So I just started reading really wide stuff, a lot of stuff that doesn't apply to my work at all. Learning a lot more about psychology, philosophy. I spent a lot of time last year learning about Stoic philosophy. This year I've started learning more about Japanese philosophy. So just trying to learn a wide range of stuff, and then hoping my brain at some point goes, click, we've got it.
Yeah.
And not trying to focus on it, just allow my brain to simmer over and maybe produce something. If it doesn't, that's fine. I've learned a lot of interesting stuff. I think a lot, when I listen to I love the self-help genre, but a lot of it is kind of on you. You need to do more, you need to focus more, work harder, sleep less, all that kind of stuff. And I think actually sometimes that intense concentration on one thing probably isn't so helpful.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever looked at any of the read or looked at any studies where they've looked at elite performers? And there's this kind of famous 10,000 hour rule.
Yeah. The one that's just been bastardized heavily.
Absolutely. So that is a thing. Yes, the more time you spend on something, the better you get. But most of the truly elite, the legends that we all talk about, let's say Roger Federer, arguably the greatest tennis player of all time. It'll be a long time before you can argue he's not. He didn't commit to tennis until his late teens. Before that, he was too interested in wrestling and other things. And there's
football as well.
Absolutely. So there's so many musicians, artists, just all the elites. They did a whole bunch of stuff, learned their crafts in different areas, got their movement, balance, coordination, thought processes in place, and then went, right, the one I like best is golf. The one I like best is tennis. And yes, occasionally you have someone who just did that one thing, but they've shown it in every field. So pandemics, guys who predict how severe a pandemic's going to be, when they've only done that job, they predict their predictions are way worse. So they predict it's either going to be nothing or death on an untold scale. The guys who have jumped from field to field are much more accurate. And even Darwin and stuff like that, we always think he just looked at those things. Whereas most of these scientists, the really great ones, Einstein, everyone, they looked at loads of stuff and then occasionally had a really good idea. So that's my thought process.
Yeah.
Try to read around.
Yeah, for sure. I can certainly appreciate that as well. I think nowadays I'm trying to follow more polymaths, understand how people who have exposed themselves to different fields think, and what you said about Japanese philosophy, Stoic philosophy, but then reading about Moss, whatever it is you get a greater appreciation for how life works. You start to form a better mental model of how the world around you works, and so when I realized, when I've kind of written down, what am I actually interested in? And it's things like, mindset, evolutionary psychology, evolutionary biology, neurobiomechanics, or just if that's a term, and being like, okay, cool. If these are the things, where do they overlap? And they overlap in my line of work. And okay, what are the problems that I can help solve with that level of curiosity, which is actually, let's just help people fulfill their human potential. Let's get them physically fitter and healthier. But having done that is just exposing myself to people who think a certain kind of way, who have that broad spectrum of not just curiosity, but the way that they think. You can apply their level of thinking to any kind of system or any kind of industry or any kind of study. And then you realize that actually we're not limited. We don't necessarily have to be limited by our specialism we can actually learn to think in a certain way, which allows us to draw from lots of different places. And so, to your example about using the pandemic as an example, all that's been done, at least in our country, is we're just going to ask these health crises experts, this medical officer, what needs to be done. Whereas actually, well, what about the economists? What about the people who are actually in charge of health and fitness? And all this is like, let's figure out a broad way of coming up with the best solution, as opposed to here's this one route we're going to go down when you have no clue about the complications and the implications of that by going through other routes. So yeah, and I find it actually helps inform my work as well. And I don't know how you see that, Jake, as well, but I certainly feel by broadening that horizon, broadening that spectrum of thinking, it allows for better mental models, and therefore I feel like I can apply to my be better at the work that I do.
Absolutely. We often kind of warn people that if you go to a surgeon, expect for him to recommend surgery. And if you go to an anaesthetist, or if you go to a rheumatologist, expect that he's going to recommend some kind of medication. If you go to a GP, everyone, whatever your specialty is, you're probably going to recommend that thing. It's the hard part is putting yourself somewhere in the middle of all those guys and trying to look at everyone and say, okay, genuinely the best one for you would be this. And it's the same with all situations, is that it's hard. That's why we don't do it. And a lot of what your brain does is try to make everything automatic. So consciously, you're not dealing with a lot. Subconsciously, your brain is doing all kinds of amazing processes, making decisions for you on your behalf. Have you guys ever read that Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman?
I've got it on my reading list as well.
Yeah, so it's fantastic. So that's a book that really changed my opinion of myself, is just realizing that most of what you do is a snap judgment. It might be a good snap judgment, and it probably is. It's probably approximately the right answer, but sometimes it's not. But the problem is your brain convinces you like things that are easy feel comfortable, things that are difficult are unpleasant. So thinking hard about a complex issue, Brexit, for example, was a great one. Should we be in the EU? Yes or no? Oh my God, that's the most. You could probably study for years and years and years and not come up with a definitive answer, yes or no. Yeah. So what people do is make a snap judgment. I don't like immigration. Yeah, we should leave. I don't like the way British farmers are being treated. Yes, we should leave. I like having a weekend in Amsterdam. We should stay. So it's that kind of snap judgment. Now, if you looked at it, if you step back and look at it, you would realize that was rubbish. If someone else did it, you'd be like, you're so biased. That's an awful decision based on the fact that you like a weekend in Paris. But we all do it. Yeah. We all have moral superiority. That's another one, that we all think we are morally superior. Even criminals in jail will justify why they're there, and that it was for a morally superior reason. Especially fraud. Fraud is a big one. It's always, I'm not the bad guy. I might have stole £20,000 from my boss, but he's not been paying me enough for years. It's always moral superiority. So, everything is story and perception. Your own perception of it, based on. Can I get a bit geeky with you now?
Please 100%. Do. I'm so interested in what you're talking about, man. This is amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Your brain uses feedback from your eyes, ears, and body, so your muscles and joints. So your visual system, your vestibular system, and proprioception. And it uses that sensory input to create a map of your body and your environment. And once you know who you are and you know where you are, you can then decide how to interact with your environment. So moving basically towards a target or away from a target. Do you move towards the apple and away from the snake? And that's the basis for everything. So the primary goal of the brain is movement. So as long as movement's working okay, then everything else, and movement is not just, can I move my arms, can I move my hands? It's control of my heart, control of my digestion, the ability to go to the toilet okay. It's all of those things. So as long as movement's working okay, we also then have hopefully good cognition, and cognition and movement are very similar. That's why if we see someone has a real problem with movement, they normally have a change in cognition as well. And also if you change cognition, you normally see a change in movement as well. So your reality is based on processing sensory information in the now, comparing it to past events to make predictions about the future. And that's as complicated as it gets. So your reality, who you are, is based on what's happening now, what happened in the past, and what do I think is going to happen in the future. So if the door suddenly opened and someone came running in, my reaction might be like, oh, cool, it's my wife with a screaming child. That's perfectly normal. No stress reaction, just like, hey, yeah, fine, hand it over. I'll do both at the same time. Your reaction might be to jump out the window because guys come to, break into the house and rob you. You might have had a scary past experience. I'm sure you've had it where you're driving in the car and there's traffic slowing in front of you and someone in the car goes and grabs hold of the car, slams their feet on as if they're trying to hit the brakes. And it's just annoying. But I've never been in a car crash. But if you've been in a car crash, your brain is saying, hey, we're processing similar sensory information, but our past experiences are different. So that's your reality. So I think the important thing, I don't know why I've gone down this route, but it's one thing I always try to think with my patients is try to be patient with them, because what they're experiencing now is different to me, and their past experiences mean, let's say, pain. For me, what might literally be just a little bit of a niggle, I'm not worried about it, 2 days time, it'll be better. For them, that might be, oh my God, I've had this before. This is that recurring pain that comes back every 2 weeks. I don't know, there must be a muscle tear. Maybe I've got joint degeneration. My dad had something like that. I'm not gonna be able to move my shoulder. Oh my God, not be able to work. So I try to always think about that as well, is when someone's not behaving the way that I would, is try to remember, well, of course they're not. They're never going to. We've not had the same experiences. Their versions of current events. It's that classic one, right? You're looking at a chair from two different directions. It's the same chair, but you're two different interpretations.
Yeah, there's definitely, so this leads on to like a bunch of questions that I had for you thinking about it prior to this conversation. I'll start kind of at the beginning a little bit, because the pain, what you touched on pain there as well, that's something we definitely want to talk about, because me and Umar have clients who deal with varying degrees of pain, and people who are listening, I'm sure they've got some aches and niggles, some of them that they want to take care of. But talking about the nervous system as well, can you delve a little bit more into about its role compared to other systems of the body and its importance to us actually thriving?
Yeah. It's basically, the nervous system is, I'm going to say it's in control. It's coordinating, at least. So
it's a governor.
That's how I view it. It's the general. So, you have to have a heart, you have to have lungs, you have to have intestines, you have to have kidneys, all this kind of stuff. But the nervous system one is connecting everything together and orchestrating the orchestra. So it has the ability to say to one area of your body, do more, do less, but it's constantly monitoring all the time, and it's constantly processing sensory information to help you move towards or away from targets. So movement's the easiest one to think of when we talk about that, but it's also for digestion. So as soon as you put a piece of food towards your mouth, your sense of smell subconsciously, before you've even said, that's lovely hot chocolate, as soon as it gets near you, your subconscious has already activated nerves that go into your brainstem and say, hey, I've detected a sensation, get salivary glands ready. And then as soon as your jaw opens, the same thing. Hey, it's coming in. As soon as it touches your tongue, you get more taste, and it says, yeah, it's here. Salivary glands go. And now I want to activate chewing muscles. As soon as those chewing muscles start going, they start trying to activate, again, through sensation, swallowing muscles. So everything is just sensory networks. The nervous system, really, if you're looking at movement, balance, posture, and pain, you really want to consider, how is the nervous system? First of all, is it working? Very simply, on or off. Is it broken, or is it healthy? So if I was the world's strongest man, let's say I had the most incredible grip strength, I could, crush a melon in my hand. All you'd have to do is maybe damage the sensation from my hand, and suddenly I've got no power in that. I would not be able to coordinate my hand well enough. I would still have all the muscle strength and the bulk, but I wouldn't be able to coordinate my hand well enough to crush that melon. And vice versa. I could have fantastic sensation. I could feel, the most minute hairs and still to be able to get a good grip on that melon and crush it. But if you cut the motor side, I've still got all the muscles there, but I wouldn't be able to activate them to crush anything. I promise I don't think about crushing things on a regular basis. Not part of my.
That's how you eat. You just crush everything.
I just crush things. Have you guys seen that thing about someone ripping in half an apple?
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen that.
YouTube it later. It's the best thing. I promise. The best thing you'll do today is watching a man rip apart a whole apple with his bare hands. It's a glorious thing.
Okay.
That's quite random. I've done that before.
Yeah.
But I don't. Is that like a feat of strength?
It's coordination. It's a coordination.
Okay,
So again, as long as you've got the coordination, you can rip apart an apple, and you could do it. I could do it. My wife could do it as long as she's got the coordination.
I see. Because
Right.
you got to kind of like try and pry and basically kind of work out the puzzle in your hands, right?
It's levers. Yeah, it's levers.
Okay.
I should have brought an
So
apple.
you've done it.
live.
Yeah.
I've
You've
seen
done
it done.
but-
I've seen it done before, but then I wasn't sure about the context in which Jake was talking about. Whether it's like a oh my god, that's like, I can't believe how strong this person is. But then when you explained it in terms of how levers work and how you have to kind of slowly, pry it apart, it makes sense.
So yeah, basically the nervous system is allowing you to control movement, balance, posture. So I could change any part of your nervous system and change the way you move, think, and feel. And that's why it's so important. So you guys are into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Let's say you're the world champion. You are the strongest, most mobile, technically proficient fighter in the world. And let's say during practice one day, unfortunately, take an elbow to the head. Let's say it's the most mild of concussions. You can almost guarantee you're going to see a change in your movement, balance, coordination, and pain. So that's why we see 90% of men who have one concussion, will experience body pain, because their control of movement, balance, and posture has now changed enough that when they're just trying to do their day-to-day tasks and stress is being put upon their body, they can't stabilize their joints, they can't mobilize their joints appropriately, and they start to get pain. We see most people who have a concussion have a change in the way their eyes move. So the eye itself is perfectly intact. Think of it like a camera and a cameraman. The camera is still the best. It's still super HD, sharp quality image. But the cameraman now has shaky hands, so the image is still blurred. And again, that might be subconscious. So you say, hey, do you have blurred vision, double vision? No. But if you ask them to read something or jump their eyes from one target to another, you'll see it takes a little bit longer for them to focus on that target. You need to be able to see something and say, okay, where is it in relation to me? What is it? To decide what you're going to do with it. And that could be a massive impediment. Imagine if you're driving on the motorway and you're just trying to find out where your exit is, and it's just taking you a fraction longer to identify stains, turn left, or, oh, I've missed it. And we see that all the time. So normally see a change in eye movements and we see a change in balance. The issue is bad balance, bad back. The parts of your brain that can coordinate the control of your spine also control your balance. So we see again in concussion in particular, when you hit your head, we see a change in balance and a change in spine. So you might see a change in posture, change in curvature of the spine, change in stability. So for you guys, you might be a fantastic fighter. You never got injured. You get hit in the head by an elbow once, and now every time you're fighting, your back keeps going because simply you can't coordinate the muscles to resist the different stresses being put upon them.
Yeah.
Does that all make sense?
Yeah.
It's really interesting, man.
Yeah, it's fascinating because
with all movement. So another one, if I get boring, you let me know. But another big one is we know that women are much more prone to having knee injuries, particularly like ACL, PCL, medial meniscus injuries. And we think the reason is not because they're less athletes. It's because as children, we say to boys, go out, play rugby, play football, go and get kicked around, fight, do these multiple contact sports. Women, you should just play netball, where it's a little bit slower, a little bit more static. You should do art, you should do music, nice gentle things. If you can do sports, it's one-on-one, it's not multiple people bashing into each other. So their nervous system doesn't develop as proficiently at taking in multiple moving targets and anticipating different forces being put upon their body. So they're stabilizing. Let's say I'm running straight towards you. My body is getting ready for an impact to stop me getting injured when your body hits my body. But if someone comes in from the side, I need to stabilize against that too. My joints and ligaments do not have enough inherent stability to take that impact. So for us guys who've been doing these sports all our lives, or at least as children, my peripheral vision is highly trained to see this guy coming inside, and I will stabilize against him. Whereas we think for women, because they weren't exposed to such a level of contact at such a young age, because we mollycoddled them and say, oh, delicate girl. Her brain isn't able to anticipate that force on her knee as well, and so the knee goes. And I'm not going to make up the number, but it is drastically higher for women. And it's not because they're weaker. It's none of those old stereotypes. It's not they are the fairer race, therefore they get hurt more. It's that we didn't give them the opportunity to develop their nervous system. That's the power of the nervous system. So, in the gym, they could bench press just as much as any man. They could leg press just as much as any man, and yet they're still prone to more injury. And that's probably the nervous system's inability to protect them.
And then in terms of like morphological differences between men and women as well. So we've got the pelvis, and we've got the femur coming, so the thigh bone coming down into the knee, so it produces that Q angle. So there's the argument that because that greater Q angle, basically the angle between the knee and the hip joint is greater in women than it is in men. That means that they are less physically less able to handle those kinds of lateral forces. But is there an argument then that if they actually were exposed to those kinds of lateral forces when they were younger, they do have the capacity to handle them, because the nervous system would be more primed to deal with it, and they would have built the strength as they went along, as they were growing, to be able to handle that as well?
Absolutely. So a lot of these injuries are occurring when athletes are stepping off a foot. So let's say I'm playing rugby, and I see a guy coming in, and I go to hand off, and I'm stepping out to the side to maybe try and cut in. When women are able to look at what's happening, so they've got visual feedback as well, the risk of injury is very low. So, and for men as well. So if you're looking at actively what I'm doing, because we've got visual, vestibular, and proprioception, the chance of injury is much smaller. It's when the visual system is looking off at something else, and I have to rely on feeling what happens. That's where a lot of these injuries occur. And so, yes, absolutely, there's a biomechanical argument to be had there. But our bodies are amazing, right? If you look at what athletes can handle, look at professional rugby players, the forces they are taking now is insane. It's like getting hit by a bus. They're insane collisions. So
it's like that's literally the case as well, isn't it? With like some force analysis that's been done, it's like a 30-mile-an-hour car crash between two dudes.
It's insane. So if men can handle that kind of car crash and get off the floor laughing, women can too. And yes, that biomechanical argument might be, it might add something to it, but I think we won't know the answer properly until you have true equality between the sexes, and you have just as many girls playing just as much football as boys from the same ages. The same way.
Sorry, I thought you were going to finish your point.
I can talk all day. You should interrupt me from time to time.
I'm jumping. Can I ask, in regards to, you said earlier, perception, and how the kind of almost like you develop as a person from a young age with your own sight on things, with your own experiences. How much a role would that then play on things like going through a traumatic experiences in terms of one person's perception in regards to being hit in rugby or being slammed in jiu-jitsu or whatever?
Huge.
And standing up and laughing about it, or standing up and being like, oh my god, I'm crushed. Like how does that play?
They looked at studies where they will show I'll say high school because it's we all know secondary school, thank you. So they'll show a corridor in secondary school where kids are walking up and down, and they'll show the same video to people who are very popular and really enjoyed school, and they'll show exactly the same video to people who were unpopular and hated school. And it's like they are watching two different videos. The popular kids see all the joviality and the friendliness and the people laughing and playing jokes with each other and having fun. And the unpopular guy sees the unpopular kid getting bullied, being ignored, people not talking to them. That is purely your past sensory experience dictating what your perception of that event is. And for pain, that's huge. So if you, the way you get injured even has a big impact. So you're more likely to have chronic pain, pain that outlasts the injury if the way you got injured was traumatic. So let's say I'm roofing and I fall off the roof from the very top, and I've got time to slide down and realize what's about to happen before I fall off the roof, versus I have the same injury, but it occurred doing something silly like playing with my son in the garden, and I run headfirst into a tree. The guy who fell off the roof has got way more fear because he's got time to think, oh my God, process all that sensory information, think I'm about to die, John did this, that's how he died. So when he hits the floor, his nerve system is primed to detect pain and injury, to let him know how bad was that. Whereas I'm having a great time, my endorphins are high, me running in a tree is just like a funny, stupid thing, we'll laugh about it for days. I'm not going to have chronic pain from that. Same for car crashes, whiplashes. If I'm sitting at traffic lights and there's a car coming up from behind and I've got time to watch him accelerating into me, and let's say I've got my kids, so that's that parental fear for them, which is huge, by the way. I don't know if you guys have kids now, but parental fear for your kids is just, as a non-fearful, naturally not neurotic, not anxious guy, it's alarming how stressed out about your kids you can feel. That injury is likely to become chronic pain. Versus lovely sunny day, listening to some good tunes on the radio, have just got, have my best ever week at work, and not aware of the injury, smash. Even if we both come out with the same injury, the guy who had the fear factor is going to be much worse off. I saw a guy just this week who has just a lot of issues. Poor guy, chronic pain, disorientation, all kinds of stuff. When we're going through his history, a guy tried to burn his house down. That's about as nasty as it gets, right? Someone actively, while you're in the house, trying to burn the house down. Does that have an impact on who you become? And when you look through his history, it's just chronic pain after, chronic injury. Should have been, it sounds like he probably could have gone professional if he wanted to at the sport he was into, but just repetitive injury. Imagine how frustrating that must be. How upsetting must it be to know that you are good enough to go pro in the thing that you love, and yet every few weeks your knee goes. Some idiot runs into you, dislocates your shoulder, now you can't play for 3 weeks, for months. So yeah, absolutely. All those past events are priming your nerve system. Your nerve system is being primed in the seconds, minutes, hours, days, and months before a certain behavior. So if I go out and someone cuts me up in traffic, my reaction to him is not just in those few seconds that he cut me up, it's in the months ahead. How much sleep am I getting? How well am I eating? Am I drinking enough water? Do I smoke? Have I got a stressful job? All that stuff. So I'm quite good in the car. When someone loses their head, I've got quite good, thanks to stunning stoicism for the last year. It's quite being like, I don't know you. I don't know anything that's going on in your life. It looks like a lot of shit's going on. I'm in a good place. So yeah, you do whatever you need to unload, and then we'll get where we're going safely. Whereas, we don't all have, it's not always that easy, is it? But that's how we should be. It's trying to set yourself up as an athlete, knowing that, let's say you've got a competition, you've got a tournament in 3 months' time, knowing that what you do today is going to prime your behavior in 3 months' time. If your opponent's frustrating you because he's better than you, and you're tempted to break the rules or punch him, your behavior now and what you're doing now is priming whether you're going to respond well during that fight. It's complicated.
Yeah, it's deep, man.
It's really
there's like so many things that I want to try and delve into as well, but it reminds me. So I finished reading a book called How Emotions Are Made by a neuroscientist called Lisa Feldman Barrett. So I don't know if you've come across it or if you've heard about it, but have you read it, Jake? Yeah, cool. And what were your thoughts on it actually?
Oh, it's phenomenal. I think what we were talking about earlier about curiosity and reading around, I think that's a great book. And then you want to implement it and really think about it. So you guys had Thinking Fast and Slow on your list. That's another book everyone should read. And then think about it a lot. Think slow.
Exactly.
And really, How Emotions Are Made is that same kind of one of. It allows you to take a step back and look at your own behavior and say, is that always like realizing you're a product of your environment a lot more than we like to think. I think one thing I took away from books like that is the idea that you and I think we are one person, that we have one personality. I generally would say I'm calm. I'm a calm person by nature. I'm hopefully a fairly friendly person by nature. I'm quite energetic. I'm quite passionate, and that's how I like to build myself. But really, it's more like a globe, right? It's like a sphere, and I'm, my core personality is in the middle of that. But I have access to all the same emotions as you and Hitler and Einstein and everyone. We all have the same. We just live somewhere else in that sphere. And what's happening on around you is going to dictate which one of those emotions is accessed. And the one you spend the most time with, have you guys ever heard about how I can, if I wanted to predict what you're going to say next, how would I do that? Have you got any clues?
No. This is some Darren Brown shit you're about to do.
So the best way to predict what you're going to say is literally just look at what you've just said. Because the way your brain works, it works by association. So it opens up one channel, and then it opens up. It's a bit like on phones where you hold the thing and it opens up all the options. So you want to take a photo, it opens up the options: light, color contrast, depth, all that kind of stuff. That's how our brain works. I say the word angry, and my brain then opens up everything associated with angry. So if I spend a lot of time talking about being angry and frustrated and annoyed and people being idiots, my brain is actively opening up those channels and making me aware of people being annoying and stupid. And I spend a lot of time there. Yes. So you really want to think, you're creating channels. It's like the classic one is water dripping on a sand, right? If one drip just lands on sand over and over and over, eventually it creates a small rivulet. That becomes, a little constant stream of water. That becomes a river, becomes a torrent. And that's the same for the way we think. If you're always thinking, have you guys, a bit of a personal story, but Corinda, I told you I used to live on a boat, right?
Yeah.
So I made a terrible mistake. Just when we met, 2015, I bought a Dutch barge. So 30-meter boat, big boat, bigger than most people's flats. And my idea was I can't afford a house in London, but I can afford a boat. So I bought a boat, just the worst thing I have done in my life. Everyone told me to. Friends, family, boat people, like
boat people.
It's just terrible. The boat was huge, and people I visited who lived on boats said, don't start with such a big boat, because if you hate it, not many people want a boat that big, so not much of a market to sell to. And also, you can't move anywhere else because it's so damn big. There's not many moorings that big. But I was like, oh, headstrong. No, I know better. I'm smarter than you. I've thought it all through. I'm doing it. Anyway, worst 4 years of my life. I went onto that boat, happy, calm, usual self. We didn't go longer than 2 weeks without something breaking for the first 2 years. And not like a light bulb, the light switch, something significant, the boiler. We went 3 weeks without any water. And every time I fixed the broken part, something else in that chain broke. So the water pump breaks. Okay, change the water pump. The hot water tank breaks. Okay, change that. The tap is broken. 3 weeks without running water, literally filling up buckets to do washing up and stuff.
Wow.
By the time I got off the boat, all I could think about was, what am I going to do about that boat? Just constant anxiety, stress. I'd wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking about it. When something would break, constantly during the day, my mind would come back to it. That was the fact that I thought about it and thought about it and thought about it. And my brain had just got really efficient at letting me think through that process. Guys, it was awful. Only time in my life I've ever had anxiety. And now I'm so much more...
anxiety-free.
Yeah, I'm just so much more sympathetic to people who have it, because now I get it.
Sure.
You could be walking down the street, lovely weather, and then this thought pops into your head that's completely irrational. But it's not irrational. It's that my brain has learned life is really tough right now. We need to focus on this thing and not think about the birds singing and moss. We need to be thinking about, like, what the hell are we going to do? The shower is leaking into the bottom of the boat. We might literally sink from the inside out. What the hell is going to happen? Once I sold the boat, which took 2 years, you imagine, worst 2 years, constantly costing you money. It took about 6 months that I didn't think about the boat every single day, multiple times a day. I didn't even own it. It's not even my problem anymore. And yet multiple times a day, I'd be like, God, I wonder what he's done about that shower. I never really did get it fixed. Who cares? It's got nothing to do with me. It's out of your control. Why would you care about that?
Residual effects, man. It's mad.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Crazy, man. This is sparking so many interesting thoughts in terms of, like, we delve into self-image and how you see yourself and the various routes that in which you kind of exist in the world. Starting to pick at the various branches and changing them now all of a sudden seems so key and so integral to however we're going to move forward, and because understanding where you are, why you are, and who you are, and where you want to move forward to is attached in so many different ways, right?
Yeah, I think it's huge. The old adage of you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, I think is really true. And I've definitely found that to be true for myself, is that the people I speak to the most, I will invariably end up being interested in what they're interested in. That may not always be good. It can be great, so let's say in terms of personal finances, my parents-in-law are way better with that stuff than I was. But having known them for the last 5 years, I'm much better than I used to be, and that's thanks to the fact that they talk about it so often. And I'm sure it's the same with you guys. Being fit and healthy. If you were surrounded by, you've heard of the I can't remember if they're called social ripples or social circles, but I think they call it the ripple. So if your friend is obese, you are statistically much more likely to be obese, and that's fair enough. You probably eat together, drink together, stuff like that. But if your friend's friend is obese, you're still much more statistically likely to be obese. But if your friend's friend's friend is obese, you're still much more likely. So these things are really important, that the people you spend the most time with are focused on the same stuff as you. I definitely have it. It's sometimes good, but that when I'm getting really into something, some people of my inner circle will be like, oh, for Christ's sake, Jake, like Moss, come on. And sometimes that's good. Yeah, I should not be spending hours and days focusing on Moss. But I should probably do that as part of my master's, get obsessive about some areas. And I think that's what, if you can, is to spend time with people who are a little bit obsessive in the areas that you want to be. So if you're looking at, let's say you're looking to start your pension and you want to start investing, you don't want to do that half-heartedly and think, oh, well, my mate John put some money in and he's, has bought Bitcoin and it's gone up 200%. He's done really well. I'll just buy Bitcoin because that's what he's doing. You want to spend time with a friend who's a banker, a broker, an obsessive, someone who spends all their time thinking about it, so that rubs off on you a little bit. You might not want to become a broker. I think, sitting all day in an office looking at numbers and graphs going up and down is my idea of hell. But having access to someone like that is good. And same with you, Grinda. I've seen some of your, I think last time we spoke, I was talking about that video you did where you, it was like a mobility balance exercise, I described it. So you were on the floor, you had a
stick.
Yeah, a stick on my feet.
What's a better for a stick? A pole.
Yeah, a
dowel.
Thank you.
Dowel. Yeah, that was it.
You had a dowel. You were rotating around the floor so that you were going from kind of supine to prone and keeping that dowel balanced. That was amazing. What did I do? The next thing I did is I tried it and I was crap. But if I spent time with you and we talked about it a lot and I watched you every day, which I probably should, no doubt I would find myself doing more and more of the good things that you do. So I really think maybe you don't need to cut people out of your life, but you definitely want to communicate people who are maybe further down the path that you already are than
Yeah,
use them as reference, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And having someone who will call bullshit. My wife is great at that.
Yeah, awesome.
So I'll listen to a podcast or read a book and then be like so enthused about it and tell her about it. And she just gives me such an eye roll and like, oh, that's just obviously nonsense. And I hate it. I hate it when she does that.
You want that confirmation bias.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely hate it. But a couple of days later, I'm like, yeah, okay, fair enough. I'm glad I didn't go out and buy that thing. That was a waste of time.
Yeah, I got a good piece of advice from Precision Nutrition former owner John Berardi. He's just a smart dude, balanced guy. He says, look, anything that you read, if you find yourself really agreeing with it, go on Google and then whatever that thing was, type it in criticism afterwards and go and find out the things that are against the point of view that you've just subscribed to. Yeah. And I found that to be pretty useful. So it's like, same as you, pretty blown away by how emotions are made. And like, I think it's because for a lot of people, at least the way society views emotions, it's going to be quite a paradigm shift for people to think about how she's proposing in the book. But for me, it's just like, okay, this makes sense to me. It's like, from what the rudimentary stuff I know about the brain, about my experiences and stuff, okay, this makes a lot of sense. And I'm really appreciating what she's writing. So when I finished the book, the first thing I did was how emotions are made, criticism. And I tried to find some stuff, but actually, funny enough, there wasn't much stuff that I could actually find. But I did find one thing from one person, but it was more a criticism of like the structure of the book. I was like, yeah, whatever. That's not what I'm looking for. But and to be honest, I thought the criticism was a bit nonsense itself. But I think that's a good way to kind of catch yourself, just to make sure that you don't go too far one way.
Yeah, I think that's a great habit. I think that's a phenomenal habit. I wish more people would do that. That's I really try not to take my own opinion too strongly, because I know it's based on heavy levels of bias, and you're all subconscious. Have you ever typed into Google types of cognitive bias, and there's literally like a list of 50 different types of bias you can have and apply every day, all day, without even thinking about it.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, when you look at the pandemic, you look at Brexit, and you've got this huge divide of, your brain is the hero maker. That's the way one author describes it. It's the hero maker. So you're the hero. Everyone else is, the bad guy or the fool. Well, that's just nonsense. That's absolutely nonsense. Yeah. And most solutions, the answer is somewhere in between two opinions, isn't it? And so I think being able to step back and be able to say, yeah, okay, that's your opinion and I've got my opinion, but the answer probably is somewhere in between the two. Yeah. Also, the idea that your brain is literally stuck in a black room. It doesn't have eyes, it doesn't have ears. It's just processing sensory information as it comes along a nerve. And like we said earlier, the way you interpret information will be different to mine. Hopefully pretty similar, but they will be slightly off. So the world that you live in is different to the world that I live in. So the events that you see here are different to my events. So why would I get so angry about the way that your opinion about something? Why would I guess it's different to mine? The world you're living in is different to mine. And that affects our movement as well. And that's why with movement stuff, we can't just say, you have to go through this, I don't know, you must be able to do this exercise. This is, fundamental exercise. You must be able to do it. Their body is different to mine. Their nervous system is different to mine. Maybe they just can't do that. It'd be good if they could, but maybe there's a different way to do it. I think with pain and back pain, I used to try and be really specific about what was hurting them, like what structure was hurting them. And I know there's still a good argument for that. Especially, is it muscular? Is it ligament? Is it joint capsule? Stuff like that. But these days, I take it with more of a pinch of salt. Your nervous system is the one detecting the pain. The way it interprets that pain and describes it to you is going to be different from one person to the other. So me, not even in your body, then trying to interpret it with my sensations and my own biases. My bias is neurology, obviously. So I need to really be careful not to just say, well, it normally is neurology, so it must be. Especially because a lot of patients that come to me, if they haven't got better and it's that chronic pain, the nervous system is always involved with that. So I've got to be really careful that I don't have a bias of saying to everybody, it's pain sensitization, it's peripheral sensitization, central sensitization, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's certainly a line that, go on.
Go on, you go.
I was just going to say, yeah, there's certainly a line that you can cross, because I've had the experience in the past with a former client of mine who went to see somebody who, you know, started reading or researching the recent pain science at the time, and was like, oh, everything's in your brain. So literally told her, like, it's all in your brain. He was like, no, I feel it in my back. He's like, no, it's in your brain. I was like, he's doing an awful job of explaining to you how pain actually works.
100%.
And he's just making you feel like you are the problem. Like, it's not that you have a problem. And it was just awful. And
you just described the best way to lose a patient's confidence.
Yeah, exactly. And then just also make people feel hopeless as well, you know, okay, I can't do anything about this because this is just the way my brain works. It's like, no, it's a complex thing. Umar, you had something to say, because I want to ask you more about pain.
No, man, I was enjoying listening. Keep going.
Yeah, I don't want to disrupt the flow.
That'll come back. Yeah, man.
Yeah, okay, cool. Because actually, so on the pain point, right? So we just talk about, like, pain is a complex thing, and I had like a bit of a multi-layered question for you. So, and you're talking about how, you know, we perceive pain. Your perception of it is biased by your experiences. Somebody else's perception of their pain is biased by their experiences. The fact that I'm even using the word perception to describe pain as well is like, people are like, no, isn't it just this objective thing? So what do you? Because me and Umar also, we deal with clients in varying degrees of pain. So I've essentially built a career around people who have niggles, joint niggles, and especially long-term back problems, so chronic back problems, to actually help them out of that pain and feel mobile again, feel strong again, and just actually feel like they've regained the confidence in their body that they once had.
Yep.
And so what do you think people actually need to know about pain to improve their relationship with it, number one, to improve their relationship with their body, and then also to get themselves out of pain and stay out of it?
I think number one is that pain is a warning system. It doesn't have to reflect damage. So you can start to experience pain because your brain is perceiving that a tissue, a muscle, ligament, tendon, joint, is coming to the end of its ability to deal with stress. So if you put stress on any form of tissue for long enough, eventually it will fail. So that could be like a constant load, or it could be repetitive load. But if you hold that type of force on it for long enough, any tissue will fail you. So pain can start to occur when that tissue is starting to fatigue and it's getting to the point of injury. So it's really good to listen to pain and recognize, okay, I'm getting some pain now. I need to either change the stress on me, or give it a break and come back later. It doesn't mean that you've actively injured something. So I'm putting up loft insulation at the moment, and I'm boarding over it so that we still have a storage space. And if in the future we want to go up into the loft, then we've already got a floor there to go into. And it's miserable work. It's just the work. You're wearing a full respirator because it's super disgusting up there. You can imagine they're big rolls. There's not enough room. It's little slope spaces. So I'm 6'4", so I'm crippled over in like the worst space. You know, it's just awful.
I have my own personal experience of that. Having done that with my sister when I was about 13 years old. Both of us in the loft, taking instruction from my dad, being like, "Don't do this, do that, don't do this."
That's amazing.
Crazy times.
That's amazing. Great idea.
He got you up there because you're small enough to fit in and nimble enough to do the work, right?
his big ass wasn't getting out there, so we had to.
That's amazing. So the other day, I basically got to the stage where my back was really starting. It gone through the kind of odd niggle to a kind of constant burning pain around kind of my left QL. And so I climbed
for
up,
people who don't know what the QL is.
Sorry, quadratus lumborum. So that's a muscle that kind of runs from your kind of like from the lower ribs, and it's going to run down over to the kind of left hip, the back of your left hip, like the pelvis. Big, powerful muscle. And obviously it's just having a hell of a workout in a position that I'm not used to working. So in a deep squat or on hands and knees for a long period of time, which is not something I spend a lot of time doing. although perhaps I should, right, guys? But anyway, so I'm getting this proper burn from kind of left lower back, and I look in the mirror and I'm proper wonky. Like I basically am alarmed. I looked in the mirror, I was like, oh my God, I've blown a disc. You know, that's a disc injury. A patient who comes in to see me and has that antalgic posture, so their body is shifted off to one side, like that's often a sign of a disc injury. And so I just took a couple of breaths and I was like, okay, just calmly think about this. You've been stuck up there for about 6 hours, which is too long. Yeah. I would have told anyone else, break it into half-an-hour chunks. But I had a job to do and we got 2 kids, so 6 hours. So I got some tools, did some stretching, said to my wife, old man style, I just need to lie down for a bit. So did some stretching, did some self-massage, and basically just lay on the sofa like an old man. Had some water, had some food. Got out of bed, got up, and was still pretty stiff, but the burning pain had gone. And looked in the mirror, and basically what was happening was when I was bending forward, you would see my kind of sternum was shifting, obviously, kind of left of where my belly button was. And then after having done a bit of stretching, lay down for about half an hour, that was no longer happening. So I was like, okay, what it was is not a disc, because if it was a disc, that wouldn't have changed in half an hour. There's too much swelling, there's too much pain and chronic injury there. What you were getting is muscular spasm, saying you're stressing out your back too much. I'm going to lock everything down and try and protect you. But I'm telling you this is hurting because you're running out of time. So then take some time off, take all the pressure off. The muscles will say, okay, the stress is gone, they relax, and I'm back to normal movement. Next day, a little bit stiff. 2 days later, absolutely fine. So it's that knowing that pain is a warning system. It doesn't mean you are injured. It can mean you're injured, and it's constantly there. And it's every time you do the same movement, and you've tried doing, you've tried stretching and doing stuff like that. That's when I would say if you've got pain for more than a month or 6 weeks and it hasn't gone by itself, that's when I'd say just go and see someone soon. The other thing to know about pain is it's adaptive. So the mechanism of pain can dictate if it's short-term or long-term. So any injury, we call it peripheral sensitization. So what that means is if I tear a muscle in my shoulder here, it will be more sensitive to touch. It will be more sensitive when I move it, because again, the warning system is saying, please give this a rest so I can heal it. The problem is if the pain is severe enough or goes on for long enough, you get a constant bombardment of pain into your spinal cord, and then from your spinal cord up to your brain, and those different areas start to adapt, and they become more and more receptive to that pain. So now I can experience more and more pain that is less and less real. So if initially I've torn a muscle here and it's painful to touch, 3 months down the line, it might be more painful to touch, even though the injury is healed, because the nervous system has adapted and become very effective at detecting pain. If it goes on for long enough, the pain can start to spread to what we call secondary sites. So pains, areas that are perfectly healthy, but start to experience pain because the pain system has become so strong, it tells its cousins, its brothers and sisters, look, we're still in pain. I need to tell everybody, warn him that his shoulder is still injured, even though it may not be so real. So that pain science is a real thing, but it's trying to, as a clinician, and I include you guys as clinicians, is trying to differentiate, is it a warning system pain? This person is not controlling flexibility and stability well enough, so their mobility is sacrificed when they're doing a certain task. Sitting on a road bike for an hour, their low back is starting to give them a warning signal that they're getting towards the end of their tolerance. Or is it peripheral sensitization? There's actually an injury there that we need to try and help heal. That might involve doing certain movements or exercises or training to take the stress off that injured area while it heals up. Or is it now secondary sensitization? So the injury actually might not be that bad at all, but they're experiencing pain. I'm now experiencing pain down the whole of my left arm and down my left back, where you need to find the original source of pain. That's the key to it. So if I originally tore my shoulder here, and now I've got whole pain down my whole left side, you as a clinician need to know where was the pain originally to assess them properly. And the research shows if you can get rid of the initial pain, a lot of that secondary pain goes away very quickly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that can
from
be
that
really,
attachment point, right?
yeah. So
From
that can be really
anchor point, everything's just spread.
Sorry, say that again.
So it's like from that initial anchor, everything is spread from there, right? That's
Absolutely.
why go in there first.
Absolutely. So it can be hard because sometimes people forget, because if they've had pain long enough, they can't remember how it originally started. So it gets complicated and it can be really tough. But that's the key, is trying to say, where was the original source of pain or stress, and try and fix that. Don't chase.
Don't stop chasing pain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
That's fascinating.
Really
And then, yeah, because I think that's super helpful for people to understand how pain actually works, because it feels like such a catastrophic thing. But actually, when you understand that it's a warning system, and whether you do have pain or don't have pain, whether you do have an injury or don't have an injury, it's still good to look at it like that, because you realize that a lot of the outcome is still in your hands.
Yeah.
Because that influences. So going back to the stuff about perception as well, because it's going to influence how well you handle the pain and your subjective experience of that pain as well, and yet the predictive models and everything like that. So kind of going back to like incorporating a little bit of how emotions are made and the concepts that were laid out in that. If we're like, the less aware we are of the kind of the nuance of, let's say in this case, the pain, the longer the pain can last, the more intense it could be potentially. But if we're able to have, in the book she describes it as emotional granularity, where it comes to emotions, the more precise you can be about the emotions that you feel, the better control you have over your experiences. And then trying to do the same thing with pain, do you think that applies as well? So trying to just literally, instead of it being like, this is happening to me, or I am in pain. Instead of I am in pain, thinking this is happening to me, what can I do about it? What's my experience of it? And kind of detaching yourself away from it slightly to help you overcome it. What's a good way to do that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's really, really good. To try and look at it, there's research to show that if people imagine a painful situation from in their own body, or if they imagine that they're looking at themselves from like a third person perspective, so there's a camera looking at them and they describe their pain, where it is, how it is, stuff like that, the person who describes it from a third person perspective will generally say it's less debilitating, they're suffering less. So the pain will be there, they're suffering less because you're viewing it from someone else's perspective. And I think that's really important. And it's not easy because it sucks when your back hurts.
You feel like you're in it, right?
Yeah, it's awful. It can be really awful. So I think it's important as a clinician not to make your patient or yourself feel guilty that they haven't controlled their pain well, because the last thing you want is guilt or anxiety. That's always going to make things worse. So it's trying to help someone accept that they are in pain, that it's not the end of the world. The pain nearly always will get better. It's just trying to find how can we do it the quickest. And like you said, it's trying to say when, how, and why does it hurt? Because a lot of patients will say to me, it's just painful all day. I say, okay, so when? Breakfast? Yeah, it's painful at breakfast. Okay, and an hour after breakfast, it's still painful? Yeah, it's still there. Okay, give me a number. And you just really get them to tune in. And then by the end of it, it's like, well, it's not there all day, is it? It's painful for the first hour of the day. It's stiff for the next hour of the day. But by the afternoon, you're doing everything you want to do. You're pissed off because the next morning it's painful again, which I get. But that gives you a lot more control of the situation. Your brain its model of the world is to control your environment. That's what it's trying to do. It's just trying to control your environment as well as it can. And it gets really frustrated and anxious and angry and aggressive when its model of the world doesn't work. So for you or me, healthy guys who love exercise and take pride in our health and our fitness, to have back pain every day, so you can't do your BJJ, you can't do your mobility work, that's like, my model of the world doesn't work. I've done everything right. and now my back hurts. And so you and me would really suffer in that situation, I think, because you're like, well, I'm an expert in this. I know everything about this. Why is my back not getting better? Whereas the average Joe, who maybe doesn't care about it, I just sit in the chair all day. It doesn't really matter to me if my back hurts because I'm actually more comfortable in the chair. They might actually do better than us, despite the fact that they might be in worse shape. So trying to frame it is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, framing it, that's a great way to put it, is framing the situation, framing the pain. And because of the fact that you get so engrossed in it, it can feel like it's difficult that there's a way out, but also kind of it's like literally looking to a brighter future and saying, actually, future me doesn't have to be in pain. Future me can be fine. And how long that takes depends on several factors, but one of them is definitely your perception of where you see yourself in a few months, a week from now, a few months from now, a year from now, like what you're doing with yourself and just working towards that as well.
One thing I will say to patients is keep things very simple and say, everyone knows about the fight or flight response, with deers in headlights, cats, big eyes, all that kind of stuff. So we all know about the fight or flight response. And the other side is rest and digest. Fight or flight is generally priming you to try and protect you. So it's going to probably make you feel pain worse. Rest and digest is feel good, good days, happy times, all that kind of stuff. So obsessing about your pain and thinking about all the time and getting anxious, unfortunately, is actually making it worse. It's some authors suggest that 90% of the output of your brain is inhibition. So trying to stop other processes from happening. So 90% of the output of your brain, if that's true, is just trying to say, don't do it.
Yeah.
That includes pain. So if we had two pathways, let's say I'm touching my finger now, we've got a sensory pathway that's doing soft touch and vibration, and we've got a pain pathway that's doing pain and temperature. The sensory pathway is huge. It'd be like a motorway, loads of traffic able to go down, speeding that thing at high speeds. The pain pathway is like a bike path, one bike at a time, slowly pootling along. The reason it's like that is we have so much pain inhibition. So if you look at the dorsal horn in the spinal cord, so the back of the spinal cord, where the pain pathway is coming in, you have something called a synapse. So the pain pathway comes in, and it basically has a relay system, like a wire in your house, going from the fuse to your light switch. So you have a relay system. That relay system can either promote the pain and pass the message on, or it can try and stop the pain and say, no, I don't want to feel it. The number of synapses that stop pain far, far, far exceed the number of synapses that promote pain. So that's why now I can really lay into my finger, I can really pinch my finger and it doesn't hurt, because my brain is inhibiting it, saying, dude, there's no damage. It's just my finger, my blunt fingernails, pinching my finger, there's no damage there. Big issue. It's inhibiting the pain, it's stopping the pain. If I let you guys pinch my finger, much, much earlier, I would say, ouch, and I'd stop it. Because now my brain's saying, I'm not the one in control here, you're in control, and you're actively trying to hurt me, you're a threat. So it's going to stop the pain, it's going to stop inhibiting the pain, i.e. it's going to promote the pain. When you get yourself stuck in a mental space where you're anxious, stressed, you're not sleeping well, the ability to turn off pain goes down. And unfortunately, we start to see the number of synapses that turn off pain versus the ones that promote it. They should be, say, this one's off, this one's on. They start to become much, much closer. So now when that sensory information bombards the spinal cord, it has a much higher likelihood of coming into the spinal cord, going up to your brain when you feel it. Unfortunately, it's when it gets up to your brain that you start to suffer. So it's like I said earlier, the seconds, minutes, hours, months before something happens, you're priming your nervous system. So this is why we should all spend so much time trying to get ourselves into a good, happy space, so that if we do get injured, the chances that it becomes chronic pain are smaller. Yes. I say to all my patients, don't feel guilty about your pain, and I want you to take time for yourself. So if you love having a hot bath every day in the evening, don't feel guilty about it, just go and have a hot bath. If a glass of wine for you, yes, there's reasons why you shouldn't have wine, but if a glass of wine for you is your off switch, I feel great, have the glass of wine. If going for a walk on a rainy, wet day is what you like, just make sure every single day you're going for a walk. Do something every day that is your happy place, that you literally have, again, a relay system going from the part of your brain that experiences positive emotions, joy, happiness, and it goes straight down to your spinal cord and switches off pain. That's why soldiers during the Second World War, when they got shot, if they got shot and they knew it was the end of their war experience, they often wouldn't feel pain, because they were like, oh yeah, thank goodness that hell is over. You imagine the First World War being in those trenches, must have been hell on earth. It's hard to imagine anything worse than being there. So you get shot in the leg, brilliant, I get to go home, versus poor, and you probably feel guilty for your friends who have to spend another day in there. Whereas if someone shot me, it'd be the worst. It would be the worst. But that's all just about what your brain's perception is. What's the story around that pain?
Yeah.
It's interesting stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's super fascinating. I think what I'm getting from that is how much you can shape your experience of your pain as well, and how much you are actually in control of it, to whatever degree you can be. So learning the tools. So you're talking about stress, learning the tools to manage your stresses, putting yourself in peace of mind. So we know nutrition plays into that as well, because the healthier your body is, one thing that happens is less inflammatory cytokines flying through the system, so there's less inflammation in the body. And then movement is actually key as well, because you're telling your brain it's okay for me to actually make these type of movements. Again, there's some nuances to that as well, but you don't want to stop moving, because a common thing that people think is, oh, I'm in pain, that's it, I should stop everything that I'm doing. Yeah,
I've got a little trick. So the men of my family have a weak low back. That's, I remember when I was 22 and I got my first episode of back pain, my dad literally tapped me on the shoulder and said, welcome to the family. Great.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah. And my back's normally pretty good, but having kids is challenging when our son for the first year of his life did not sleep. He was awake every 2 hours, and he'd be awake for hours during the night. So we spent hours rocking him. First time parents, you didn't know what the hell you're doing. Lifting him in and out of cots, even with trying to do it in good posture. You cannot look after a small child well. They're so much lower than you. Yeah. I would find every so often I start to get some low back pain. And the straightaway thought is, oh God, what's going on? But actually I'd find if I just did some basic movement patterns, things like stand up nice tall, and I would just do pelvic tilts, so just rotating my pelvis backwards and forwards. And then I would do a hip hike and hip drop, so just stand on one leg, try and hike my hip up on one side and then drop it down on the other. If I did, say, 30 seconds on one and 30 seconds on the other, by the time I finish, you just feel that spasm in your back relax, and all the pain is gone. You get on with your day with no issue. And for me, that was quite powerful, realizing, just reinforce that idea of that pain is just a warning system saying, I've been stuck in this certain position for a while now, and I'm starting to get annoyed about it. So just take the stress, move it in a different way. Don't say, oh, I'm going to have to lie down for the rest of the day, my back's hurting, but say, okay, just what have I been doing? I've been standing here with a 10 kilo lump, and I've just been rocking back and forth for the last 2 hours. So those muscles that don't normally do that are probably pretty annoyed about it. So I'm now going to do a completely different movement and try and put the stress somewhere else. Decompress those muscles, give them a little bit of stretch. And it's amazing how often that does the trick. Now, I'm lucky that I know that stuff, and you guys are lucky that you know that stuff, but a lot of people wouldn't. And that back pain would just be like, oh God, I can't lift my child, my back starts to hurt. And then the guilt that goes along with, I can't look after my child. A lot of patients, I ask every patient, what's your goal for coming here? Because I want to know that what I have to offer is meaningful to them. What I don't want is, if let's say something absurd, like they want to be able to fly, and I'm like, well, I can get you to walk, but they're still not going to be happy, even though I've got them out of a wheelchair, they're not going to be happy because they wanted to fly. Yeah. So, and I'm sure you guys do the same with your clients, right? Is what's your goal? Do you want to be an Olympian? Is that realistic, or do you just want to be able to be a little bit fitter and healthier? Do you want a six-pack?
Yeah, because the immediate thing is like, okay, I want to get out of pain. It's like, okay, I get that, but what do you want to get out of pain for? Is this something you want to go back to, or is this something that you're trying to reach? Do you just want to play with your kids? It's as simple as that. But that's the more attachment you have to a more powerful goal, the more likely you are to succeed.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think the emotional parts of our brain, you don't really have a good connection with words to those areas. So why is quite a hard question to answer. So why do you want to be out of pain? I obviously don't want pain. That's a stupid question. So I always say why. It's a bad habit of mine. It's something I have in my notes, is at the top of the paper. Ask what, what can't you do? And if they can tell me what, then maybe say, and why does that annoy you? Or why is that a problem? But, okay, you want to be out of pain. What is it? What is the pain stopping you from doing? What does it mean to you? Because what is a little bit easier. Well, in the morning I can't put my socks on. Okay, cool. So putting your socks on would be good for you. Yes. But that's something I'm still working on. I often feel with patients that I don't want to ask them the obvious stupid questions. So obviously I don't want to have pain, but it's trying to make myself think, no, well, again, your perception of it is different to mine. You might think you have cancer. I want to know, what do you think is the cause of the pain? What do you think the answer to the pain is? Try and make sure that our two approaches match.
So it's kind of mapping their responses and being deliberate with the questioning to get an appropriate answer to help them understand their own experience as well.
Yeah. And you can do that for all kinds of all areas of your life, really, is ask yourself, if you try and ask yourself, why is that important? So you might find yourself really pushing to be, I don't know, whenever you look on, so all my adverts on Facebook targeted at me are all about being, what are they like, adverts, funnels, and be a CEO and online businesses. And it's all like coaching and all that kind of stuff. And it'd be really tempting. They've got all these young guys saying like, "Oh, I was poor. I had £5 in my bank. I lived in the garage of my mum's house, and now I have a Ferrari and all these amazing houses. I'm super rich."
Yeah.
And it's really tempting to look at and be like, "Oh man, I should be that guy. Like, that's amazing. I should do that." And it's quite good to be like, "Okay, why?" Well, why is obvious. It'd be good to have all that money, but what would actually change? What would you have to sacrifice? The Stoics would say that when you behave like that, it's like children acting, playing. So you might watch the Olympics and say, "Oh man, I should have been a 100-meter sprinter. I really should have gone for that." But the Stoics would say, "Well, you're an idiot. You're like a child playing. One day you want to be an Olympian. One day you want to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. One day you want to be a Buddhist monk and go live under a mountain." Just, you need to ask yourself, what would it actually mean to you? What would actually change in your life? And so from what I'm really about these days is quality of life. That's all I want. So rather than people trying to, especially in the self-betterment industry, rather than people making me feel guilty that I'm not getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and getting an extra 2 hours work on someone else, I want to sleep. I want to be more rested. I want to wake up and be in a good mood. I don't want to wake up and think, bloody hell, this is miserable. I want a nice life. I want to work the amount I want to work. I want to work with the patients I want to work with. And so I think that's really important question do you guys keep like a record of goals and wants and stuff like that?
Yeah, more so in recent times for myself.
Yeah, there's a good one which I was asked to do a couple of years ago, which is I'm afraid I can't remember who told me it, so I would like to give them credit for it, but it's the 1-3-5 action plan. So 1 would be your goal. So what do you want to achieve? 3 would be like 3 key areas that would allow that to happen. And then 5 would be, in each of those 3 categories, what 5 things do you need to do to make those actions occur so that you reach your goal? And that's quite good, because it's really about making yourself say, why, what do I want, and why and how would I do it? And that's good. Better than a vague goal of just, I want to make 100 grand next year.
Yeah.
Why? What would you have to do to make 100 grand? That maybe a lot of sacrifices. Would you enjoy the 100 grand, or would you just be not seeing friends and family? Anyway, we've driven quite a lot there. I apologize. A bit of a random thought.
No, that makes a lot of sense as well.
It's all connected,
exactly. It's all connected. We like tangents, but it's all connected somehow. Because we're just talking about what does it mean to you to get out of pain in that sense. And then And off the back of that, so like changing the relationship with pain, but also I find that goes hand in hand with changing the relationship one has with their body, because people often feel like I'm a broken mess, I'm busted, I'm shit, all these different kinds of phrases that they might use for themselves. Is like I'm hopeless as well, like I can't get better, and my body is letting me down. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. What are your thoughts around? Sorry.
How sad.
Yeah, exactly. It's it's wildly common. So what kind of things do you have to? What do you suggest to people to? First of all, how does that impact their experience of their body and then any pain that they're in? And what kind of tools do you think are useful to help get out of that kind of mindset, which will help you to improve your situation, improve how your body functions?
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. I hear that all the time. So many patients say to me, like, I'm broken. I'm like, it's rubbish. My back's rubbish. I need a new one. It's really sad. I often will think, so I have my to-do list. At the top of my to-do list, I have a few phrases that I try to keep in my head, particularly when I'm not behaving the way I want to. And one of them is, I am no one and everyone, I am nothing and everything. And I am no one and everyone is meant to be, it's like an ego check. So it's trying to remind myself that I'm no one special. Like, I'm just an average person. I'm not morally superior. I'm not smarter. I'm not anything better than anyone else. So don't have judgments about your behavior. Just keep low ego. And I am everyone is the idea that you and me are brothers. Like, we're so, in the whole wide universe, you and me are so, so closely related. So although it's easy to think me versus them, it's not. Like, we're all the same. We just have slightly different goals and slightly different ways of going about it. So that's one. And I am nothing and I am everything is, again, to remind myself that it's more of a natural thing. So I think of that when I'm out in the woods walking and I'm trying to connect, have connection with nature and stuff. It's trying to remember again that I'm nothing special. I'm not nothing compared to the tides or the mountains or the seas or a storm or anything like that. And I am everything is to remember that, like, we're just dust and dirt that for a brief period of time has become conscious. How amazing is that?
Yeah.
And that's something I try to tell to patients is, okay, your knee's bad, but my God, man, like, you grew from 2 cells, from 2 people, and like 1 million to, I don't know what the chances were, but it's like unbelievably small. You developed, you've grown into all these things, you can do all these amazing things. Actually, what you are is a whole load of cells all working symbiotically together to allow you to function. And yes, you're going through a stage where a group of cells, a group of tissues aren't working very well to each other. And we need to do something about that. But it's like someone who has a bad heart. It's suffering. If it was your mum, you wouldn't be like, bad mum, need a new one, rubbish. She's got old and rubbish. What a rubbish mum. You'd be like, poor thing, let's try and support her and help her out. And that's the trying mentality I try and have with my patients is that tissue, if it's injured, is suffering, and it's part of your team. It's one of your guys. It's not a rubbish thing that's been attached to your body. It's you. It's one of your teammates. So we need to try and help them out and try and view yourself with more sympathy. You're not the enemy. It's trying to remember, it's all part of you. You need to, and if you think more positively about that part, you will generally think it will generally move better. It will feel better. It's when you hate something, I hate my thumb. It always hurts. Oh, bloody hell, it's hurting now. I bloody hate my thumb. It's going to hurt more because I'm now really focusing on allowing myself to feel that pain and connect with that pain, rather than, okay, my thumb, I've got a lot of use out of that thumb. I've done a lot of DIY. I've done a lot of gardening. I've done a lot of sport. I've used that thumb a lot and it's starting to suffer. So, okay, so what things can I do to take the stress off it? How can I help it repair? Is there any things that I can do to reduce the pain and help me along? It's just a different mindset, isn't it? Not easy.
Yeah.
None of this stuff is easy. It all requires daily work and habit.
Absolutely.
Again, I hate to preach about stoicism because that's what I've been focusing a lot. But the Stoics would say, if you were to chop your arm off and put it on the desk, you wouldn't view it negatively. Like, it's no longer a part of you. You wouldn't be like, oh, my arm, I've lost my arm. You'd be like, okay, that part, I had it with me for a while. It was great while it lasted. Wonderful arm. I did some great things with it, but it's not with me now anymore. It's not part of the team. So I just let it rest. And I love that mindset. You know, have you heard of the Stoic? What do they call it? I can't remember if it's the Stoic priest or the Stoic philosopher, or basically he's a mythical character. He's not thought to have existed, but he's the idea that you could be on the torture rack and not feel pain. And now no one has they're not saying you should be able to do it, but it's the idea that you can step back and view it with detachment and compassion. So if they chopped off your thumb, not like, oh, stupid thumb, it detached from my body, you bastard, like idiot, you should have stayed on my body. Like, oh, okay, you were with me for a while, now you've returned. That's a big thought of theirs, is you don't own anything. It was with you for a while, and if you lose it, it's returned. If I smash a glass, it's returned. They take it quite far. They also say that if a child died, you should just, they say if you love kissing your wife and child, you should remind yourself it's not your wife and child that you love, it's people in general. So that if your wife and child died, you will not be upset. And that's the part I struggle with. I'm like, really? Oof.
Yeah.
That
I'm
is
not buying that one.
One of those like one for all and all for one things, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's tough, though. Would you say, Jake, that understanding these biases and starting to unpick your own experience, that seems like it's the root of your way right now? It is being very, very aware of that, and then operating from there with context around pain and the actual physiology behind it. How would you direct somebody and say, start here, for instance, with this kind of journey? Because it sounds quite various but very interesting at the same time.
I think the best book I've read that covers all this kind of stuff, including pain and bereavement and death and dying of cancer and stuff like that, is actually Darren Brown. You know, the
magician.
Yeah, like stage psychologist, I guess some would describe me as. He's written a fantastic book that I think everyone should read. It's called Happy: Why Everything is More or Less Fine. And it's kind of like the opposite of the self-help industry, which are very much, it's your fault if you're not successful. You need to do more. You need to sacrifice more. You need to work harder. And he's much more, he basically looks at the last 3,000 years of philosophy on happiness and basically summarizes what the great thinkers have put. And it's just a brilliant book. I really would say everyone should read that book because it's very humble. And it's that same kind of thing of, he really says, don't aim for success. Don't aim to be the best. Love the process. And I think that's really, really important. It's just allowing yourself to think, okay, I would like to get from A to B, but it's the journey that's the important part. And while I'm on that journey, don't get too obsessed with my own thoughts, my own opinions. Don't take anything too seriously. Like G said earlier, remember to Google things and say, what's the criticism of that? Because someone will hate whatever you think. It's like if you look at Audible and you look at the reviews, the best book you've ever read will definitely have 1-star reviews. Because someone saying this is the worst book ever written, it's just a complete waste of time. Don't buy it. Terrible book. You think, how did you think that? I think the same with movement, balance, and posture. It's trying not to get too obsessed. So one thing, for a long time, we were really obsessed with posture. So you have to have this perfect posture all day long. I don't know, you guys may be told, but I remember being told to brace your abs, brace your core muscles all the time, to support your spine, keep it nice and stiff. And then you look at someone, Sullivan, what's his first name? Robert Sullivan, an Australian physio. And he's basically works with a whole bunch of people and says, that's the opposite thing you want to do. You want to relax, because when you're bracing the whole time and thinking, my back hurts, I've got to keep stiff, I can't let go. If I let go, my spine's going to crumble, it's going to fall apart. Your pain is going to be amplified because every time you move in a non-perfect way, you're freaking out about it. So his approach is the exact opposite. Is he would take a patient and say, okay, flex forward, and just relax into it. And then when they relax and they realize it's not painful, he would point that out and say, how does it feel? It doesn't hurt as much as you thought it did, right? So relax a bit more. And he'll just take them through different pain-provoking positions and get them to relax into it so they can see for themselves, their back is not going to crumble. I mean, you are so resilient. Your body is so resilient and strong. Like, isn't it a marvel? Have you ever watched bloopers of ski crashes, and you see someone fall down a mountain? There's a guy who fell down 1,000 vertical feet. He fell skiing off piste, just bouncing and bouncing and bouncing and bouncing. It's horrific to look at. Quite funny, but horrific. And at the end, he's dizzy as hell. Gets up, gives the crowd a wave, off he goes.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's amazing. So we're not.
It's like on that, actually, I had this experience because I don't ski. So the one time I did ski, I bailed so hard after going so fast without realizing how I even started to go so fast. But when I realized I started to go so fast, I was like, oh shit, I don't know how to stop. And so that's when I started to bail hard, right? I leaned back, the skis went up, and I went tumbling. I was like, but it was going on for so long that partway through, pretty early on, I realized, oh, this ain't stopping until I just wait it out. So I just relaxed. So exactly. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna wait for this to stop happening. And I was just like crashing, going all over the shop, like my knee smashing to the ground, my hip smashing to the ground, shoulder, neck, whatever. But because I had relaxed from the outcome, I was like, oh well, this is going on for ages now. That totally, exactly. Just bored from how long it's taking. It's like, okay, well, what am I going to eat when this is over? And then that actually helps, because initially you brace, you're really tight, but then it went on long enough where I could just relax into it and just let the falling happen and kind of enjoy it in a funny way. And then my body was totally fine. It was absolutely fine.
Yeah, that's a great example of it.
Yeah.
I had one time.
Detachment, isn't it? It's that detachment from the actual, like you're talking about, with the pain, with the sensation, with oh my God, it's terrible. So no, it's not that bad.
Yeah, and to be able to see it's a funny thing. I've definitely noticed that. So I've been quite fortunate to have skied most years, and we've always felt bulletproof. So we go with a group of friends, all quite high standard, and there's never been any injuries. And then when we turned 32, we went with a big group, and in a group of 12, I think we had 6 knee injuries in 1 week. And that has completely changed my perception of skiing now. Last time I went skiing, I had to really work on thinking. I really got myself in a headspace of, we used to be young and flexible, and when we fell, our knees could bend in any direction and be fine. And now we're old and stiff, and I just need to be really careful I don't fall over. And it's really, I like to ski hard and challenge myself. And I had going down, everyone stopped for coffee. And it was the last day, and I was like, I don't want to lose any time. So you guys stop for coffee here. I'm just going to keep going up and down this run. And it's steep, like a steep, narrow run. And the best snow is on the side. So I'm always skiing on the side because that's where all the nice snow gets pushed to. And I make a bad turn, exactly like you. I lean backwards, and when you lean backwards, you lose all control. And I shoot towards this wall of snow. And straight away, normally I would just regain control. So lean forward, take control, turn out of it. And instead, the first thing that goes into my head is, oh my God, my skis are going to go into this wall. My boot's going to twist. I'm going to destroy my knees. This is awful. So what happened? I leaned even further back, completely snapped my poles in half. That was just all the fact that I was super tense and stressed and not relaxed. Whereas if I'd not had that terrible week skiing with all my friends, I would have easily just leaned forward and turned out of it. I'm sure that must happen in BJJ as well, right? Like, if you just relax into it, you probably find you're a lot more flexible and you can take them a lot more. I was watching a fight between one of the Gracies and I can't remember. I've lost the names, guys, I'm afraid. But you've got the Gracies and you've got a couple of other big families that are challenging them. And you have one of the top guys, 2 top guys fighting each other, and the Gracie guy is losing. So they're both in a lock, and the guy is twisting his knee. And he's twisting and twisting and twisting, and he hears a pop. And he basically says to the ref, his knee is gone. I've won. And the other guy, the Gracie guy, is like, doesn't hurt. I'm not tapping out. Like, Jesus, how relaxed are you? So the guy has torn your meniscus and probably an ACL, and you're just lying there being like, I'm not tapping out. So adamant that I am in control of this situation. I'm not tapping out. It's a draw. They literally lay there for about 10 minutes. The guy can't twist his knee any further. It's broken. It's amazing. That's all mental attitude and years of training of just relax into it. Okay, he's got me. I can't find my way out. I'll just relax. Amazing. kind of
exactly.
psychopathic, but amazing.
It totally is. Like they've got an extreme amount of pride, and so whoever's listening, we don't recommend that you relax to that degree. tap out, please tap out. So, but it just goes to show is like you just override it. You know, you can just override it. It's it's pretty wild.
I think in terms of going back to your question, in terms of where to start, some people are naturally less emotional. So I would say it's a strength and a weakness of mine. So I am a pretty calm. You know, I'm always around here. It would take quite a lot for me to get very angry. It would take a huge amount for me to get angry. But I also don't laugh as deep as my wife. So my wife is also quite a calm person. That's why I married her. But she is quicker to laugh till she cries than I am. It would take quite a lot for me to get to the, and I regret that. I watch her laughing and she'll something silly and she'll be laughing till she cries. I'm like, oh man, I wish I was like that. Or she'll watch something on TV and burst into tears with emotion, because she's so in it. I'm like, that's kind of great that you experience this breadth of emotion on a regular basis. I'm quite dull. I'm just kind of here. I'm kind of happy, calm. And if something happens, like, oh, yeah, that's kind of funny. That's cool. And if something bad, oh yeah, it kind of sucks, but never mind. So I think we all have natural strengths and weaknesses. So some people will have to work harder on it, of trying to get that detachment and trying to calm down and step back. But that's not a negative. It might be you enjoy things more than I do. Chocolate you like taste better and make you feel better. Whereas for me, chocolate's like, oh, that was nice. If I didn't have it, that's fine too. So I don't think it's that superiority thing.
It's not really a linear thing we can actually diagnose, but it's a case of, I'd say from what I'm hearing, from what you're saying, it's a case of first understanding yourself and having that objective view of stepping back and saying, oh, wow, this is me. This is really me. And then on the back of that, how can I then look for opposite views, like you were saying earlier, and form a wider perspective, like you were giving the example of the chair at the start of the podcast, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not easy, and I've got more work to do. Everyone's got more work to do, I'm sure.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, but it's entirely worth the effort, right?
Yeah. The one I have with my wife is, we had it yesterday, and she burst into tears. Is that she will not talk about death. And I think it's really important to talk about death. It's a natural thing. You've got consciousness on this life, on this planet for like 80 years if you're lucky. You could die tomorrow. It makes sense to kind of talk about it and get aware of it, and realize that your loved one's going to die at some point. Get yourself into a headspace where that's an okay thing to happen. As soon as we talk about it, she starts crying. But it's because she feels more than me. So for her, she straight away goes to that place of what it'd be like if everyone died. Whereas, so she needs to work on that, but she refuses. And there's anything that can make your wife cry before you feel like a jerk, right?
There's Umar's got a good quote for this one. I remember you told me about it. It helped me out.
Oh, the Shakespeare one. And he was he to identify with it more. So I think this is actually in what's the book called? Obstacle is the Way. So Ryan Holiday on Stoicism, and talking about Shakespeare and how he would meditate on his death and basically say every third thought should be of the grave to motivate you to be more right now, or to just be present right now, at the very least. And in doing that, you kind of the massive, crazy, horrible occasion around death. You see it for what it really is. It's just as we have life right now, we also have death. But is that the quote you were talking about?
That's the one, man. Yeah, I think it helps to realign you. Just to, like you said, appreciate what you have, be in the present moment, be more of who you really want to be. And I think that's a good one.
Yeah, the Japanese have a phrase which is ichigo ichie. I probably said that horribly, but it's something like that. And it basically translates as in this moment, an opportunity, or this is a unique moment in time. And the idea is to recognize that whatever you're doing, whenever you're doing, is a unique moment in time. It will never be repeated. So you should enjoy it and almost be nostalgic for it in the moment. So enjoy it, embrace it. So I try to do that quite a lot when, let's say I'm looking after my son and I'm knackered and I just want to lie down and watch TV and he wants to play with me. It's just try and remind yourself, like, Ichiko Ichie, he will only be like this for a short period of time. There will come a time where he does not want to hang out with me. I'll be the least interesting person. He'll find me dull. He'll find me boring. I'll try and tell him about Moss, and he will just be like, "You are so embarrassing." But now I'm the hero, and he loves me.
Yeah.
So it's trying to be like, who he is now will die in a few weeks' time. That's the way to look at it. That death is continually here. Our life is a continual list of deaths. My 20s, when I was young and single, died when I met my wife. So it's trying to look at where you are now. I look at a lot of young guys. So I talk to a lot of chiropractors, and they've just graduated, and they're so set on who they're not and who they want to become. This is an amazing chance. You're at the beginning. You can go off in any direction you want to. What an amazing moment. But that will die after about 2 years. That initial passion and excitement and all that stuff, if you let it, it will die. So these deaths are everywhere, and it's trying to recognize them. So hopefully one day when the big one comes, it's just another in a long chain. But I think that's really important. And I try to do that with my patients as well, is when they come in, is trying to remember this is a moment in time where they've trusted me with their time, money, and energy, and be present with them and try and do the best I can and really listen. I think that's the best thing I do. Not in this podcast. I just talk continually in this podcast, but in the room, we
want it to happen.
Yeah, in the room, I don't talk very much at all. It's just, okay, tell me more. Okay, I hear you, I understand. Just let them talk. And then I literally rephrase it back to them at the end. Okay, so as I understand it, the pain started, 6 months ago. You've seen your GP, you've seen your physio, you've seen chiropractor, it hasn't got better. It's stopping you from working, you can't pick up your kids. Right, is that all right? Is there anything I missed or anything you wanted to add? By which point they probably thought of something else. Cool. Okay, so I've got an idea of what your goal is, but can you phrase it for me exactly how you want it, so we make sure we're talking the same language? Boom. Okay, repeat it back to them. Is that what you meant? Great. Okay, at that point, I'm not telling them anything about what I think it is, what I think they are, what they have to do. Should we just take a look? You do the examination, explain it to them, and then here are your options. Is that something that sounds good to you, or were you looking for something else? Just make sure you're on the same language, same thing.
And the things we've just said about you've just said about death as well just made me think of something else, which is for people who have been in pain for quite a long time as well, or what feels like forever because they're just so not used to it potentially. Whatever it is, whatever your subjective experience of the length of time that you've been in pain, and you can become attached to that. So you actually have to let a part of you die to overcome that pain. So I remember a client of mine having a second MRI done after everything started feeling great. He stopped experiencing back spasms, and he had like an 11-month period where he didn't have back spasms. And to put that into context, he was getting several times a year, multiple back spasms, and lay him out for a couple of weeks on end. And so he went back for an MRI just to make sure, like, any niggles that he was experiencing, there wasn't anything physically going on. And the radiographer or whoever was interpreting his result just said, "Hey man, look, you got a normal spine for somebody of your age. You're good." And he was like, "Oh shit." It was like, because he'd been in pain for like 6 or 7 years, and it was almost like to be told that you're okay. It was almost as if it was like, "Oh, I've got no fuss now. Like I've got nothing to hold on to. There's nothing. There's no attachment there's no reason for me to be in pain." You kind of miss the idea of being in pain because you just were in it for so long.
The rules around imaging has changed now. So it used to be you always needed a good reason to take an X-ray or an MRI. Whereas these days, and chronic pain, unresolved pain was one of them. Whereas these days, you have to really have a good reason for taking an X-ray or an MRI just due to pain, because we know the majority of people are going to have something on that MRI. If you're over the age of 18 anyway, you're going to have something on that X-ray or MRI that you could interpret as the cause of your pain. And it's got nothing to do with it. So, if us three had an MRI, one of us has a disc herniation. For sure, maybe more than one, maybe, but no symptoms of it. But if we saw it, you then be like, oh my God, I've blown a disc. It's going to compress a nerve. I'm going to lose power in my leg. It's the end of my career. What am I going to do? I'm on my feet all day. I teach classes. I've got what I'm going to do. And then your nervous system makes that pain real. So I really unless there's a profound neurological weakness or like a clear reason, I'm worried they have cancer, they've got unresolved neurological weakness, profound, they can't lift their toe or something like that, then I'll get imaging. But I almost don't want you to see what's going on with your back, because I know it probably isn't going to make you feel better about yourself. When I was up in the loft the other day, when I came down, the other thing was my neck was crunching like anything. Straight away, I thought, bloody hell, there's probably a bunch of like arthritic changes, age-related changes in my neck. Relax for half an hour, you're fine. If I took an X-ray of my neck, I guarantee you're going to see some changes. I don't want to know they're there, which maybe but I don't. So a lot of people still want to push because they think imaging, so X-rays, MRIs, are going to tell you what the actual cause of your problem is. It won't. There's no correlation between what you see on an X-ray or an MRI and pain. That's quite a crazy thing to say, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important for people to know that as well.
Yes. Yeah. And yet still there's a lot of imaging done where they'll say, oh, you've got a disc injury. It's a disc herniation, that's the cause of it. And you think, it doesn't match the patient's symptoms at all. Patient paid £500 to have a private MRI done because they were so stressed about it. And now they've become that case. They've identified with their syndrome. Fibromyalgia is a hard one. So fibromyalgia patients, do you know fibromyalgia?
Yeah.
People watching may not. So fibromyalgia is basically widespread pain. It's super complicated, but it starts with initial injury, and it's that secondary pain we talked about. So you have an initial injury that doesn't resolve, becomes widespread pain, and it has lots of other factors like fatigue, low mood, anxiety, depression, bad sleep. It's a real nasty one to have. But that population often really bind onto any diagnosis you give them and any imaging you give them. And that can be disastrous for them. So they have an MRI, they've just got widespread pain. The pain, the disc injury you see in their back has nothing to do with the fibromyalgia. But then oh God, I've got fibromyalgia and I've got a disc injury. I'm going to be Google. Oh, it's going to lead to my nerve compression. I'm not going to be able to walk in 10 years. Oh my God, you're paralyzed. So, sometimes ignorance is bliss. It's
And
very interesting.
Do you treat people with fibromyalgia as well?
I work with people with fibromyalgia. Yeah. I'm very realistic with them about outcomes and what we can achieve and what we can't achieve, and I'll set strict timelines. So with all my patients, I don't want to be the guy that you see for a year and then decide it didn't work. I don't want you to say you spent thousands of pounds on me and had no improvement. So unless it's unrealistic, all of my patients I want to see a meaningful difference in 4 to 6 weeks. So I want to see over that 4 or 6 week period that you're telling me, yes, there is a change. And that might not be that the pain is gone, but it's that you're suffering less, that you're able to move easier, you're able to balance better. There's something meaningful to them that we're seeing a change in. Or we'll see, we talked about bad balance, bad back. We might see that they can only stand on one leg for 2 seconds with their eyes closed. But for people up until about the age of, up until about 39, you should be able to do 10 seconds with your eyes closed. And then with age, it starts to decline quite quickly. So if we just talk about a bit more neurology, so your brain uses eyes, ears, and feedback from your body to control movement, balance, and posture. It's also using that feedback to control curvature of the spine, posture, mobility. Unfortunately, as you get older, you tend to lose muscle mass. So as we start to lose muscle mass, we don't get so much proprioception. So you can't, when you shut your eyes, and you're trying to feel where your body is, you can't feel where you are so well. You don't control movement as well. A lot of our population is sedentary, so we're sitting in a chair all day. So you're not training those proprioceptive systems. You're getting too stiff in the ankles, hips. You need good mobility to drive proprioception, to tell you where you are so you can control balance properly. As we get older, we start to get some degeneration on the neck. So if you allow the neck to stiffen up too much, the neck and feet provide a lot of that feedback. So as the neck starts to stiffen up, we start to see a reduction in balance. the inner ear, that changes the way, your eyes start to change with age, your ear starts to change with age. So there's a lot of reasons why we see changes in movement, balance, and posture with age. And so my job is to look at the health of those, look at the function of them, and then say, what combination of exercises and treatments can we do to try and keep them as healthy as we can for as long as we can, or to repair them? So if we go back to someone who's hit their head and they've lost proprioception. So let's say I stick a laser on my head, I'm looking at a target, I close my eyes, turn my head away. When I come back, I should be looking straight at the target. Now, some people you'll see with a neck injury, when they turn away and they come back, they'll be way off and they have to correct. So we want to do rehab for stuff like that. Do you guys do stuff like that with your clients? Or is that maybe a bit
not as deep as that? No, very interesting.
So that's a cool thing you should do. So a good little trick is get a laser. There's a system called motion guidance. You basically get a laser with, you can strap it to wrist, to legs, to head, to belly, to chest, and basically just have the patient or your client, let's say it's an old shoulder injury, have them point at a target, close their eyes, take the arm away, and then come back. And when they open their eyes, they should be pointing at the target or just adjacent to it. And if you see they're pointing off in a completely different place, it means they're not getting the proprioception, or that their brain isn't able to interpret it, or the muscles aren't working so it can't fire. So it's still complicated. A lot of time people get better by, they can't feel where it is, just by practicing it and then seeing visually where it was. That visual system will help them remap their brain, remap where they think the body parts are, and so the movement gets better.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
That's fascinating.
Really, really interesting. So much there.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, man, I know you've got to get back to the kids as well. Your wife's not going to be happy it's just over 2 hour runtime now as well. She's not going to be happy about that.
I'll pay for it.
Yeah, exactly. But man, it's been awesome. Really, really great talking with you as well. How can, so if people are looking for any kind of treatment, where can they find you? And how can they find you online as well as your clinic?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So my clinic is the Neuromuscular Clinic in Woking in Surrey. The website is, I'm afraid it's a really long domain name, but it's neuromuscularclinic.co.uk. But just type in Jake Cooke Chiropractor, Woking, and I'll obviously come up, or Jake Cooke Chiropractor, and I'll come up as well. And then for guys like yourselves who are maybe more interested in learning, I teach seminars to chiropractors, physios, PTs, and occupational therapists and stuff like that. So, and that's bespoke clinical neurology seminars, and that's a much easier domain.
Is it?
Yeah, exactly. bcneuro.co.uk. And there I have a bunch of free resources. I try to, on Facebook as well, I try to upload videos fairly regularly, but I'll admit with family life, instead of the once a week I aim for, once it's maybe a little bit sparser than that at the moment, but I'll get back in.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I always enjoy that stuff as well.
It's been a real pleasure.
It's really insightful.
I appreciate having you guys letting me ramble on for so long. It's probably the first time I've got philosophy for a long time. So I really, really enjoyed it.
I'm really glad G's had you on. Yeah, this has been so interesting, man. I'm going to go back and listen to this and then really pick out, because I've got questions written down here, but there's more that I want to go back and revisit. G and I always say this, but today's been a really, really interesting talk.
That's great.
Absolutely.
And any questions, you fire them across to me. I'm always happy to talk.
Appreciate it. It's great. I think we're going to have you on again, because you touched on certain things. When you said concussions, I was like, that's a whole avenue that I really want to go down, especially when it comes to for fighters or even grapplers and stuff, because it's not just about force, it's about velocity as well. So the way that people get thrown around, I mean, there's more movement stuff that we could cover. There's stuff about cognition as well, and how that affects movement affecting cognition. There's too much stuff. I think we're gonna have to do a part 2 if you're up for it.
Yeah, I'd love to. Honestly, really enjoyed it. Absolutely. Back whenever you're ready.
Yeah, that was great. All right, people, hope you really enjoyed it as well. And get in touch with us. Let us know what you think of the episode. Like, subscribe, comment on the episode if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're listening on Apple iTunes or on Apple Podcasts, just drop us a rating or review. Just let us know what you think of the podcast. It's always good to hear from you.
And share it as well. Share it,
please. Yeah, this is wildly important for people to know. So please share it away.